Welcome, my beautiful people, to This Week in Review. My name is Fernando David, and I'm going to get right into a question. And today's question comes off Instagram, specifically a video that I did about Medellín, Colombia. That video uh, had a lot of engagement. I had a lot of people ask a lot of questions. A lot of people were triggered by that video. Um, and and I'm not going to read the question verbatim because there was a lot of questions, but basically what the majority of the people that were concerned about Medellin were asking me about what is the status about the ongoing issue with sex trafficking or crimes related to prostitution in Medellin. Um, so the first thing I'm going to say is the following. I've been going to Colombia forever now. Since the first time I went to Colombia was in the early 90s. And I've seen a lot of change happen within the country and specifically within the city of Medellin. The city of Medellin has had a brutal reputation, especially during the early battles with the Medellin cartel, with drug trafficking, and then the incidents between the Medellin cartel and the government. Plus, you also had the leftist FARC group and a lot of paramilitary people engaged in battle within Envigado, right? So it has had its issues with violence, um, but currently is having issues with these criminal organizations taking advantage of foreigners, specifically Americans and Canadians, who are being enticed by these beautiful young women that are working in the sex industry, and these criminal organizations are using these individuals to target these tourists and, at the very minimum, just rob them, and at worst, murder them. And there's numerous incidents. You can just Google it, you'll find out. Um, and on the same token, though, there have been foreigners who have um, who don't understand the culture. Number one, who fall in love with these sex workers, not fully understanding that they're sex workers. This is what they do for a living, and they end up murdering these sex workers because they fall in love and they think that these people are being um, disloyal, unfaithful, etc., whatever you want to call it. But the core issue is the following: if you are in if you are the type of person that's in the world of or getting yourself involved in sex trafficking, or and let me define what I mean by sex trafficking. When you are hiring a prostitute or a sex worker, right, you're involved in the sex trafficking industry. In Colombia, prostitution is legal. There's brothels, there's strip clubs, there's swingers clubs, you name it, it's available in Colombia. But specifically in this case, we're talking about Medellin. You're going to find these places, right? But here's where many people are getting in trouble, and that is using apps like Tinder, right? And guys are meeting these girls on these social media apps, either Instagram, Tinder, you name it. These girls are enticing these guys to come to Colombia, and oftentimes the sole purpose is to rob you, right? I don't recommend you even get involved with any of these things, but what you need to understand is that if you are meeting someone online and you're taking a trip to a foreign country to meet someone that you really have no idea who it is, I caution you not to do that. That is the number one form currently today where people are getting robbed, people are getting, again, injured and or worse, murdered, right? Is by doing that. Colombia has a lot to offer. Medellin has a lot to offer. It's not about prostitution, right? So if you're thinking about going to Colombia for the sole purpose of being involved in the sex trafficking world, I encourage you not to do that. In fact, I am telling you, you should not do that. And don't be surprised if you do it and something happens to you. It has gotten to the point where the mayor of Medellin, specifically in that city, has banned prostitution. They're currently setting up, or it's been now probably like 8 months or so, in which the police are standing in the major areas like Parque Lleras, Provincia, and they're checking IDs and making sure that anybody coming into Parque Lleras or coming into Provincia are people that have been identified, that are adults, and more specifically, if they're in the sex traffic or in the sex trade, that they don't come into Parque Lleras. That's the whole purpose of having these checkpoints, is to minimize some of the crime that's there, specifically surrounding the sex trade. Anyway, it's something that really breaks my heart when I see it. Again, there's areas in which you can go into Medellin where it's legal, it's safer if you go to a specific location for that. But I'm telling you, just don't do it. There's no need to do that. There's really no need to do that. If you have any type of game, you can go to Colombia and pick up a girl. Just go to a regular bar. And you know, you're an American, buddy, or Canadian. The mere fact that you speak English is going to be attractive to some of these local girls. So please do yourself a favor, do the country a favor, and don't deal with anybody who's involved in the sex industry. Anyways, moving on. Let me get into the next question. The next question is, what should I be focusing on when starting a short-term rental business? So I'm going to give you an overview because, again, I've done a lot of videos on this specific topic. But the first thing you need to do is you need to do your market research. You need to figure out what type of market you have in the area you plan on starting your short-term rental business in, right? The next thing, if you find out through your market research that there is a demand for short-term rentals, and keep in mind, don't limit yourself to tourism. There's many people that need short-term rental properties, and they're not necessarily tourists. You can have business people that are interested in that. You can have people that are relocating to a specific area. So I'm going to give you an example. If you follow the news, you know that South Florida, or Florida, and specifically South Florida, has been a magnet for migration, right? People coming in from the northern states or outside of Florida and moving to Florida, right? All of these people that come here oftentimes are going to need a short-term rental property until they can find their permanent property. So that's why I say don't limit yourself to tourism, because that you can also have a large business like American Express, for example, in my area, who are oftentimes bringing in workers temporarily, and they need temporary housing. Again, don't limit yourself to just tourism as it relates to short-term rentals, because there can be an entirely different market in your area that's more lucrative than tourism. So keep that in mind. Next thing you need to understand and really have a good grasp on is what are the regulations and the zoning laws related to short-term rentals. Once you figure out that you have a market for short-term rentals, then the next thing you need to do is figure out, can you do a short-term rental based on your current laws and regulations? So understand that. Next is determining what type of property you're going to be using. There's several ways to get into the business, right? There is the investment side. There is the what I refer to. So investment is broken down in two ways. You can invest passively to a like a company like ours, and we'll do everything, and you just get a return on your money. You can invest in a property and purchase that property to convert that property to short-term rental. You can do rental arbitrage, which is, again, if you follow this channel, it is my least favorite. It's the one that I do not recommend you build your business around. You can supplement your business with it, but you shouldn't build your business around rental arbitrage. You can do property management for people that have short-term rentals, and you can manage the properties for them, and you can co-host, right, with short-term rental host and help them manage their properties. Those are the ways you can do it, but you need to figure out which way you want to do it, and then figure out how you're going to finance that. So, for example, if you're going to buy a property, how are you going to finance that property? If you're going to invest with a company like ours or invest in a passive manner, who are you going to use, right? What vehicle are you going to use to invest in? If you're going to manage for other people, what type of marketing you're going to do to attract and try to get this business. So those are the things to consider. The next is your insurance and liability. Figure out that's pretty kind of the easy part. Just the reason I mention it is that you understand that that's going to be an extra cost that you need to incur by having insurance and liability for you and your property. The next is marketing and branding, right? In this business, when you are in the short-term rental business, right? Let's talk about specifically if you're going to manage for other people, or you're going to do, or let's start there. If you're going to manage for other people, then you're going to have your marketing should have two separate strategies. One for the acquisition of the property, and then one for the acquisition of the guest. If you're buying your property, right, or you're doing rental arbitrage in which you control the property, then you need to market your property specifically for the guest, right, to get the guest to come to your property. But in both strategies, you need to be properly branding yourself and your company, right? So you need to really learn how to do that, or you need to hire that out. Next is operations, right? You need to understand what it takes to run a short-term rental business, right? You need to learn about the logistics. You need to learn about managing people, because you're going to have to manage vendors or hire your people. For example, your cleaners, your maintenance people. Those two staffings are going to be critical. But you need to figure out, are you going to hire a vendor to do that, or you're going to bring those people in-house and hire those people? Then you need to understand your operating software. What software you're going to use? Which pricing software you're going to use. All those operational sides, all the things related to the operation side of the business, you need to understand that, you need to know it, you need to learn it before you kickstart your venture. On the same token, the next one is understanding your finance, right? It is a business. You need to run it like a business, and understanding cash flow is critical. So I would personally, if you never ran a business, I would take some type of business course, or more importantly, I would take some kind of financial class related to cash flow in businesses, and understand, because cash flow is your lifeline. Without that cash coming in, you're not going to be able to operate. So understanding that is critical. Then the last thing is, which I just briefly touched on, is constantly adapting through learning, right? As you go along, as you get more experience, you're going to learn what's working, what's not. You're going to learn, especially through mistakes, and how to properly operate a business. Those things are going to be critical when starting a short-term rental business. All right, hope I answered that question, and more specifically, I hope I answered the first question about what's going on in Colombia. Colombia is still extremely safe as long as you're doing the right thing, right? If you start sticking your nose into areas where you shouldn't, because it doesn't have to be in Colombia, because people always, oh, it's Colombia. No, same shit can happen in Miami, in New York, in Chicago, in LA. If you're dealing with the wrong people, you might get bit. So now let's go into the business aspect of it before I go into project progress. But this week we made $42,000 in revenue. Others, well, let me be specific, $42,679.07. And other fees, we made $10,216.46. Our booking source, 58% came from Airbnb, 27.7% came from Booking.com, 5.7% came direct, 5% from HomeAway, and 3.1% from Marriott. And that, my friends, is broken down when we come related to revenue. Airbnb came in at $23,000, Booking.com at $7,900. We came in at $4,600. Verbal came in at $3,000, which is HomeAway, and other came in at $2,900. When we talking about RevPAR, Oakland Palms, our property in Oakland Palms is $433. Pompano came in at $310. Lauderdale by the Sea property came in at $309. Sunfield House in Fort Lauderdale came in at $280, and then the rest came in at $104. If you notice from last week to this week, our RevPAR grew significantly, right? For example, other was at $84, and now we're at $104. But at the same token, if you look at when you go back up, I mentioned that Airbnb had 58.5% of the reservations for last week, but yet they only made $23,000. And when you compare that to the other properties, the revenue from the other properties, they exceeded what Airbnb made, right? I'm sorry, the other platforms is what I meant to say. Okay, nothing to mention about staff, our staffing. Here's obstacles and problems for this week. Here's what we did have a big incident this week where we have a client, and this is where you as a business owner need to constantly evaluate whether the client is worth it or not, right? We have a client who we're managing four properties, and the client he's a demanding client. And I don't mind when a client is demanding. In fact, I like it because it keeps us on our toes, and it pushes us to constantly get better, right? But here's what I don't like, and here's what I do not tolerate, and you as a business owner should not tolerate either, is when clients think they can dictate your policy. No one dictates your policy, right? You and your staff, like in my case, myself and my staff who generate and make up the policies will dictate how we run our business. No one else, right? And if clients don't like it, they don't have to work with us, and vice versa. If you follow my channel, I've mentioned this in the past. I have fired clients that in the beginning was tough to do, because when I first started this business, every client was important. Every client, important in the sense that it was, I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to become profitable, and sometimes it was extremely hard to fire a client because it took away from the money that we were making, and we weren't making a lot when we first started. But in the long run, it has paid off, and by a lot. So you're constantly have to be juggling and determining whether it's worth keeping a high maintenance client or not. But here's where I caution you, right? Don't decide because you heard me say, hey, I'm going to fire this client, to fire a client because they're high maintenance, when in fact, they're high maintenance and they should be because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? If you are doing everything you're supposed to be doing, everything that's within that contract, and you're having problems with the client because the client is constantly changing the goalpost, then that's the issue, and that's what you need to address and nip it in the butt immediately. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, you move on. Because here's what happens. At the end of the day, if that client isn't satisfied, if that client isn't making money on their property, who do you think they're going to blame? They're going to blame you. And if you're the subject matter expert in that area, and you know what's best on how to generate money for that property, how to run that property, then you need to be exactly that. You need to put your foot down and say, hey, this is what's going to work. And if we don't do this, it ain't going to work, and you can't service them. And that's the bottom line, right? It does you no good to change policy or bend over backwards for a client when at the end of the day, what that client wants is not going to make that property profitable, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose. So that was that problem. And again, the way we overcame it was coming as a team, figuring out what are the major issues, and addressing them immediately with the owner so that it doesn't continue. And again, letting the owner understand that you are the subject matter expert, right? And they're hiring you for a reason. So they need to let you do your job. If not, like I said, you may have to move on. Project progress. Okay, as you can tell, we're back in Georgia. Our grapevines are flourishing. Now, again, for me, I'm excited about how they're growing, but understand, if you know anything about grapes, we are behind because we were supposed to prune these in February. We didn't do it till March. So we're a month behind. I don't know how that's going to affect the harvest, but again, it looks, I'm excited about it. So that's coming out well. This past week, we were in Puerto Rico. We did some work there. I mentioned it in the last week in review. This upcoming week, I'm going to be traveling to Colombia, and then we're going to be planning for a month trip in May for Europe. So we're going to be in Madrid. We're going to be in Ibiza, San Sebastian. We're going to try to hit up Barcelona and Sevilla. So if you are in Spain and you want to hire us to optimize your short-term rental, please hit us up now because it's going to give us time to pre-plan the trip. Again, we're going to be in Europe for a little under 30 days, almost a month. We're going to be there about 27 days. So if you're there and you have a short-term rental and you want us to collaborate with you, want us to help you market your property and or help you optimize it, then hit me up, please. Send me a DM or send me a message down below. Anyway, my beautiful people, hope this information was useful. If it was, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. follow me on Instagram, but more importantly, subscribe to Instagram and buy me a coffee if you want to chat about any subject related to travel, Airbnb, or the short-term rental business, or business, or running a business in general. Love you guys.